Hello EFD squad and welcome back to our top 10s. Today we've got a very special episode for you. It's the top 10 best moments of the footballing decade. Let's get stuck in. 10. Rooney's overhead kick. Think back to the great goals of the decade and there are plenty of overhead kicks among them. Ronaldo versus Juventus, Bale in the Champions League final, Mandzukic in another final, Zlatan against England, but perhaps the best of all was in 2011 in the Manchester derby, as United hunted down their 12th Premier League title under Alex Ferguson. Manchester City were a team on the up as they came to Old Trafford and would go on to break a 25-year trophyless streak that season. But they couldn't hold a candle to the Red Devils. United were coming off a loss, but it was their first league defeat of the season, arriving at the hands of Wolves in February. And unsurprisingly, they went into half-time with a 1-0 lead before David Silva deflected in an equaliser after the hour. However, with 12 minutes left on the clock, a cross from Nani found Rooney in the box. It was a nicely flighted ball, but truthfully, it was behind Rooney and it looked at best a half chance at a slight angle between the two defenders. But that didn't matter. Rooney threw himself into the air and launched a perfect overhead kick into the opposite corner, prompting even the nearly 70-year-old Ferguson to lose his mind. It was a goal that required not just skill, but boldness, bravery, and cheek to attempt. In short, it summed up Wayne Rooney, one of the greatest Premier League players. 9. Gerrard's slip. If Rooney's wonder goal encapsulated his Premier League career, so did Steven Gerrard's slip, though in a more brutal way. The Liverpool captain, of course, had a spectacular record in the game, with over 700 appearances for his hometown club and nearly 200 goals from midfield, as well as more than 100 England caps. Gerrard made the Premier League Team of the Year 8 times, including 6 times in a row between 2003 and 2009, as well as winning the Champions League. But he never got his hands on that Premier League trophy. His closest run came in 2013-14, when the Englishman was anchoring Brendan Rodgers' brilliant red side. Gerrard had excelled all season, making up for his total lack of defensive output with inch-perfect balls over the top for Sterling, Suarez and Sturridge, and he ended up with a league-high 13 assists. But when Chelsea came to Anfield with just 3 games left of the season and the Reds in first place, he would experience the most painful moment of his life in the sport. Presented with a simple pass by Mamadou Sakho, Gerrard took a sloppy touch before losing his footing, allowing Demba Ba to race through and score just before half-time. And while Liverpool huffed and puffed in the second half, a late breakaway capped a classic Mourinho performance from the Blues. Liverpool would go on to give up a 3-0 lead against Palace in their next match, and the trophy went to the Etihad. 8. Why always me? There's no better way to make yourself king than to kill the old king, and football's best example of regicide came in 2011, when Manchester City came up against title and local rivals Manchester United. City had taken 22 points from their opening 24, but a visit to Old Trafford was widely expected to test the strength of their title charge against the team which had won 4 of the last 5 championships and made 3 of the last 4 Champions League finals. City started brightly, and it took just 22 minutes for a blockbuster moment to arrive as Mario Balotelli opened the scoring with a cool side foot, lifting his shirt to reveal another, which read, "Why always me?" It was funny and self-aware, but it also showed the belief in the City team, like taking the lead at home with their more illustrious rivals was no big deal. And so it would prove. Johnny Evans was sent off shortly after half-time, and Balotelli and Aguero would both net to make it 3, before Darren Fletcher pulled one back. If anything, that made things even crueler, as United fans, accustomed to Ferguson magic rescuing them in even the worst circumstances, roared their team on, only to be hit with 3 successive punches, as David Silva and a brace from Edin Dzeko made the humiliation complete. It would take another 7 months for their superiority to be confirmed, but 6-1 was the moment that City arrived at the very top. 7. Neymar to PSG. Transfer fees went from gross to obscene in the 2010s, with the oil money gushing out of Paris, and Manchester as the sport's nouveau rich sought to overthrow their aristocratic rivals. And both the most ridiculous and most hilarious example was Neymar's switch to PSG in 2017, a move which not only saw one of the best players in the world swap Catalonia for Paris, but also shook Barca's confidence in their own invulnerability. Leaving the Brazilian with a €220 million release clause was brave at best, but as the story gained momentum, Spanish football seemed dead set on making itself look as silly as possible. Gerard Piqué posted a picture with Neymar on Twitter, along with the caption, "He's staying," while La Liga chairman Javier Tebas accused PSG of peeing in the pool, thanks to their disregard for FFP. And after the move was completed, Barca still didn't admit defeat with good grace, instead slapping their former forward with an €8.5 million lawsuit for breach of contract. In the end, though they've both won 2 titles in 2 seasons, neither party got the last laugh, with Neymar spending over half the time since out injured, while Barcelona haven't made a Champions League final since he left. The perfect end to a story in which no one comes off well. 6 and 5, Ferguson and Wenger say goodbye. The 2010s was the decade that English football finally moved on from the dominance of Manchester United and Arsenal. Chelsea consolidated their place at the summit of the European game, while Manchester City became the league's dominant force, with Liverpool and Spurs surging upwards too. But amid that, Arsenal and Manchester United faces crisis of identity, as both clubs lost the managers responsible for building them. It was always expected that Ferguson would need a final title to announce his retirement, and after the disappointment of the 11-12 season, he seemingly dragged United to the title the following year by force of will alone. It was later claimed that David Moyes underperformed by taking a title-winning side to 7th place, but truly, Ferguson overachieved with them, stealing Robin van Persie from Arsenal and wringing 35 goals and assists out of the Dutchman, while only Chicharito and Rooney scored more than 6 in the remaining squad. With a bit of luck thrown in and a last curtain call for Paul Scholes, United somehow finished 11 points clear of City, with the same points total as the previous year. Departing after an unforgettable 5-5 draw with West Brom, Ferguson left the club with an ageing squad, a new coach out of his depth, and a boatload of trophies, ensuring his place in United legend. Wenger's goodbye, on the other hand, was perhaps more painful. Though Arsenal would win the FA Cup in 3 of his last 5 years at the Emirates, the decline was plain to all, as football became more reliant on pressing than ever. Once revered for his exacting standards of fitness, Wenger's team slowly became physically inadequate, too often butchered by big sides and toothless against smaller ones. However, his legacy was too great to be ignored, both in silverware and playing style, and so it came as a relief when the Frenchman finally announced in 2018 that he would leave at the end of the season, allowing the fan base to shake off the toxicity and appreciate Le Professeur for his outstanding achievements. A class act to the last, Wenger bowed out with 17 trophies to his name in North London, telling the fans to take care of the values of the club. For better and worse, the side will never be the same again. 4. La Remontada. Sometimes football can make you forget who you're rooting for and simply get swept up in the unpredictability of the sport. Back in 2017, Barcelona were left hoping for just such a night, after a 4-0 away loss to Unai Emery's PSG put them on the verge of a first UCL round of 16 exit since 2007. Led by Angel Di Maria, who scored a brace, PSG simply pressed the Catalans off the park, and at the Camp Nou, they only needed to keep their heads to achieve a famous victory. However, they were 2-0 down by half-time thanks to a Suarez header and a Cazorla own goal, with Messi netting a pen shortly after the interval to raise the atmosphere to fever pitch. But PSG weren't done, and Edinson Cavani scored a brilliant goal to make it 3-1, taking extra time off the table and leaving Barca needing 3. The Blaugrana rode their luck, with Ter Stegen saving a 1-on-1, and then they left it until the 88th minute to get their 4th, a brilliant free kick from Neymar. But they'd soon get a helping hand from the officials, as Suarez went down under little pressure in the box to buy a second pen, again converted by Neymar. With 95 minutes on the clock, it seemed like the evening would end in heroic failure, until Sergio Roberto popped up at the back post to volley in a lovely chip ball from the Brazilian. Luis Enrique, the fans, the football world went berserk, as Barcelona once again redefined what was possible in the game. 3. Germany 7, Brazil 1. It's a truth universally acknowledged that World Cup finals tend to be a little bit disappointing, and the seminal moment of the 2014 edition came in the semi as Germany faced off against Brazil. The Seleção would waltz through the group stage and laboured to victory against Chile and Colombia in the knockouts, and were unbeaten on Brazilian soil since 1975, a run of 62 games. They also had 3 World Cup finals and 2 wins since Germany had last made the showpiece match. But Germany hadn't been sitting on their hands during their dry spell. A coaching and development revolution had married the best of Dutch and German tactical innovation with physical power and spotless technique. And when the semi started, it took just 11 minutes for Thomas Müller to put Die Mannschaft ahead. What followed was 18 minutes of brutality. Marcelo seemingly disappeared as Germany strolled into the box at will. It was 5-0 at half-time, and the passion shown by David Luiz and his compatriots before kickoff was replaced by utter disbelief. Charitably, Germany took their foot off the gas somewhat after the interval, only winning the second half 2-1 to inflict Brazil's heaviest loss since 1920, and the worst for a host nation in a World Cup history. Joachim Löw went on to lift the trophy, while Brazil's wounds are unlikely to heal until they win the tournament again themselves. The Battle of Stamford Bridge hands Leicester the league. Leicester's 5,000-1 title triumph was one of the greatest achievements of the 2010s, but it's hard to pick out a single moment in the run. And in fact, it was not a Leicester game which secured the championship, but the face-off between Tottenham and Chelsea, with the Lily Whites the last side mathematically capable of catching the Foxes with 3 games to go. For some reason, the Spurs players became convinced they were truly in with a shout of lifting the Premier League trophy, and approached the game at Stamford Bridge like they were landing in Normandy. 2-0 up at half-time, in a period which saw Pochettino have to separate Danny Rose and Willian, Tottenham were pegged back in the second half by goals from Eden Hazard and Gary Cahill, and responded with one of the most brutal performances in the division's history. The team committed 20 fouls, with many more not called, and set a Prem record for the most players booked in a single match on 9. Moussa Dembele ended up charged with violent conduct for gouging Diego Costa's eye in a touchline brawl, while Eric Lamela stamped on Cesc Fabregas, and interim Blues coach Gus Hiddink was knocked to the ground. Both sides were fined for failing to control their players, but while the battle raged on in London, Leicester fans and players celebrated in the Midlands, having made the impossible possible. 1. Aguero! The 2011-12 Premier League season will quite possibly never be bettered. 2 local rivals competing for the title. In one corner, a manager coaxing the last strength out of a weakening squad. In the other, a side rammed to the gills with smart signings. And a race which lasted until the last day of the season, where the points tallies were so close that goal difference would end up deciding the result of 10 months worth of toil. Both teams boasted top strikers, Aguero finishing the campaign on 23 and Rooney on 27. But City went into the last day with a plus 63 goal difference to United's plus 55, meaning that matching the Red Devils' result would almost certainly bring them the trophy. However, they made hard work of it, facing a QPR side who were still fighting the drop and finding themselves 2-1 down with just minutes on the clock. Meanwhile, United's game had finished early, a 1-0 victory against Sunderland, leaving Alex Ferguson clapping his players uncertainly on the field as they waited to have another championship confirmed. But what happened then was unforgettable. Edin Dzeko's towering header, Balotelli's composure, and Sergio Aguero's dancing feet brought City from agony to ecstasy, wrapping up the victory and a first title in 44 years in the 94th minute with the citizens' 44th shot of the game. As the news broke at the Stadium of Light, United players struggled to process what had happened, while the Etihad was flooded with disbelieving fans celebrating the unimaginable. Not only had they won the league, but they laid down a marker. The power shift was very much happening in Manchester. So guys, that was our 10 moments of the decade, but do you agree? Let us know in the comments below. As ever, like, subscribe, stick around for more great content. Bye!